Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of What a Fuster Cluck. I'm your host, Lolita Keys. Thank you so much for joining me. If you haven't already done so, please remember to like, share, follow, and subscribe to the show on Apple, Spotify, or YouTube, the three platforms where you can find this hot mess of a show. So, what is it that really melted my butter this week? Two things in particular. Number one, customer service, which I feel has become a dying art. And the other thing I want to talk about is the pattern that I'm seeing with younger people, people in their early 20s, maybe mid, maybe late 20s, and their incessant desire to go from 0 to 60 on the career ladder. So let's start with customer service. I began my career working in dentistry. It was honestly some of the best times of my life. I worked with great people. We had really close relationships. We were friends in and out of the office. We just had the best time. Was it the most glamorous job? No, it wasn't. But I always felt good about it, knowing that we were servicing people. And the other thing about it that I really enjoyed was knowing that most people, if we're being honest, really hate going to the dentist. And I enjoyed making that experience a better one for them so that they would come back time and time again. And as my career kind of moved on, that was something I really valued and took pride in, was making patients feel comfortable, talking to them about the procedures they were about to be going through, talking to them about their insurance, which is a disaster, as we know. And it literally takes like a degree just to understand how insurance works. And so I really did enjoy being the person that folks would go to try to get that information and help them just understand more what was going on and just feel better about the situation, whether it was something financial for them or just the procedure itself. And that stayed with me throughout the entirety of my career. I eventually left dentistry when I decided I wanted to go back to grad school. And then I went back to it, believe it or not. And I got my graduate degree in healthcare informatics was the name of the program. And I just had this vision, as you've heard me say before, that I would get my master's and I would immediately start making the six-figure salary that I had always dreamed about. And I didn't care about the student loan debt I was racking up because I thought I'll be able to pay this off in a few years if I'm making all that money. And I was incredibly wrong. As I've mentioned, I got my first job offer out of grad school for a whopping, I think it was $37,000 or $47,000 a year. Huge disappointment. And this wasn't that long ago, you guys. This was like 2013, 2014 that this happened. So just over 10 years ago that I got a master's of science in healthcare informatics and got that as a salary offer. And so I kind of decided to stay in dentistry because I was doing better financially in that career. But eventually I did pivot into other things and am in a completely different space now and with a company that has really allowed me to kind of grow and spread my wings. And one thing that I attribute my success to is customer service. I am a huge believer that being kind, helping people, keeping people comfortable and happy, answering their questions is the key to success. Now, that doesn't mean that I don't get a little fired up or that I don't have a crazy side to me. I do. And if I get pissed off, that's a whole other conversation. But I never try to lead with that unless I feel like somebody deserves it. And even now, as a middle-aged woman, I try to think before I speak because, sometimes Lolita gets a little saucy and it can be pretty lethal. But anyway, most of the time, I'm a pretty lighthearted person, outgoing. I genuinely have a true curiosity for humans in general. I love to have like friends of all different walks of life from all different places and just learning about different people, different cultures, all kinds of things. And I think that has served me well. I grew up in a melting pot of a community in New Jersey, and that's been a blessing for me. No matter where I go in the world, I just feel like I can fit in anywhere. I can talk to anyone. And that's kind of one of my little superpowers is I'm not intimidated. I enjoy talking to people and I can get into any conversation. It doesn't matter if you're an MIT graduate or, I don't know, just somebody who could care less about anything and doesn't want to follow the news or talk about politics or think about health and wellness or whatever. It doesn't matter. I can shoot the shit with you, whether we're at a dive bar or a fancy restaurant. And I really do think that that is a superpower and has really driven a lot of my success. So, why am I talking about this today? Recently, I had an experience at a car dealership. I'm not going to say which one because I don't want to poo poo on anybody. And they didn't piss me off so bad that I'm willing to, publicly blast their business. But I thought this is a conversation that needs to be had. And I hope that more people hear this and start to put more of a focus on it with their teams at work, with their employees, whatever, even with their kids. I think there's a lot to be said just for being a gentleman, being a lady, opening the door for someone. A lot of these things that we just feel like is a lost art, or that radical feminism just kind of, blocked for so many people or made people question whether or not they should do something that's actually just a nice gesture. And I wish we could get back to a more customer service centered society. And when we have so much going on with AI and computers and technology, you call a phone number, you get a recording, you're routed through the system, you don't know who you're going to be talking to and where they are in the world. And do they care? Are they invested in the company? And those are some of the items that I think are important. If you've got people answering your phones or responding to your emails or sitting at the front desk of your office, these are the people that will give folks the first impression of your business. And if you do not have the right people in these positions, it will haunt you. Now, maybe you're somebody like Amazon who could just give a shit. Your business is so big, you could care less. There's not a focus on customer service. Although I will say that I've been pretty impressed for the size of the company, the level of customer service that I've typically had if I've had a problem and I've called them. And I think that that goes, again, a long way. People are more likely to remember a bad experience than they are to remember a good experience. But that depends on how good the experience actually is. And that is where it boils down to, have you gone so above and beyond and been so stellar in your customer service that people are going to remember you in the same way that they remember a bad experience? And that's where the rubber meets the road. That's where the quality people stand out from the average Joe. And so if you're someone who owns a business, is about to start a business, is working for a company that's struggling with this, it really is important. It's so important to remember that customer service matters. And if you, sorry guys, I forgot to put my phone on Do Not Disturb. So yeah, customer service matters. And it doesn't take someone in HR to train you in this. You can do this yourself. Even something like saying, please, thank you, may I? I mean, just basic manners seems like it's something that's gone completely out the window. And I would love to see us get back to more, we're such a fast-paced society that sometimes it's hard to sit back and remember that being nice and good customer service goes a long way, because we're just like, gimme, gimme, gimme. And you can even bake that into your customer service model. How quickly can you service someone but still be efficient and still give them an amazing experience? Some of the things that I can think of, I'm going to base off of the example I'm going to give you today. So I had to take my car in because, I can just imagine the stereotype jokes that I'm going to hear. But my car just turned 3 years old. Happy birthday, Rosita. And when I bought the car, I had gotten a tire and rim protection plan because it was affordable enough at the time. And I got a little bit of a nicer rim package on my Rosita. And I thought, all right, let me pay for this. This is worth it. And I never needed it until a week ago when I murked a curb in a parking lot, which obviously I haven't done in the 3 years that I've had the car. And so as soon as I got the damage, I immediately called the dealership to talk about, what do I need to do? I've got to get this thing in. And I asked all the appropriate questions. I did all the due diligence. Does my plan cover this kind of a repair? It was cosmetic. It wasn't anything major. It was just a small scratch, but still, I paid for the plan, so I want to get it fixed. So, does my plan cover this? Do I have a deductible? How long does it take to repair? Am I able to drive it? Among a few other questions, right? First of all, the woman that I spoke to, she was like Susie Smoker. She talked like this. And it was just already, it was just like, okay, and she sounded like she didn't want to be bothered. And it was already annoying for me because I'm being nice, I'm being friendly. And it was almost like she was shaming me that I was running out of this warranty and bringing the car in at the last minute when truly the damage had just been done within 4 days of the policy closing out. And I don't care if I paid for it, give it to me. Don't make me feel bad for using something, even though it's the very end of when I can use it. That's just the way things are sometimes. Let me tell you how she could have flipped that. Instead of being so rude about it and nasty and kind of shaming me, she could have very easily said, oh my gosh, how lucky are you that you still have this plan? There's 3 more days. We're going to get you in. We're going to get it all taken care of. That would have been the better option, right? But no. And so, long story short, this car dealership happens to be 30 minutes from my house. And so I got a ride from my in-laws. Shout out to some of my number one fans, Grammy and Grampy. And I got a ride from my in-laws early in the morning before the coffee kicked in. I said I was going to drop the car off. They said the guy comes Wednesday. I show up and they're like, oh, well, we don't know if cosmetic repairs are covered. And I said, no, no, no. I called on Monday. I already checked all this out and I was told that it did. And then they're like, well, that's just the lady that answers the phone. She doesn't start repair orders, even though she had told me that the day we spoke, she would kick off the repair order so that there was a record of it. No, no, she doesn't do that. And they seemed to have no idea of my prior conversations or what was going on. And then here comes the best part. The gentleman that fixes the rims when it's real severe damage, like a crack or something along those lines, he comes in on Wednesdays. The guy that does the cosmetic repairs, well, he comes in on Wednesdays too, except he only comes in around noon and has been known to no show. So I'm like, all right, well, I'm here. I just drove 30 minutes. I got myself a ride. Call him. Make sure he's coming. Otherwise, I'm just going to go home because I can't leave the car here. The guy says to me, well, we can't call him because he doesn't have a cell phone right now. He owes AT&T $1,800. And I'm standing there in my mind thinking, WTF? And I said, and this is somebody that you do business with? And his response was, well, we have to go with an approved vendor. And this is the guy. And again, customer service. What could they have done better? Well, this guy doesn't show up. He's not reliable and you can't contact him. He doesn't have a cell phone. So even if he was reliable, if something happened, how is he supposed to get in touch with you to tell you that he's calling out sick or whatever? I mean, sure, he could use somebody else's phone, but it doesn't seem from what I've heard about this guy that that's something he's going to do. And so what should you do as the dealership, a multi-million-dollar producing car dealership? You should probably call your vendor that you partner with, which in this case is a company called Zurich. You should call Zurich and you should say, this dude is a dud. He's not reliable. And he doesn't even have a way that we could contact him to make sure that he's showing up or to schedule time with him when we know that we have customers dropping off their car. And then they tried to make me feel bad for the fact that it was the very last day that the warranty or the coverage was even good for. It's like, no, dude, I'm not in the wrong in this situation. Get it together, Blanche. Figure out what's going on. That would have been the proactive customer service approach so that you're not standing there talking to me, the customer, about some dude's cell phone billing problems and how he didn't pay the $1,800. So that is the way that it could have been handled. It should have been handled, is that the dealership should be more proactive in working with the vendor whose warranties and coverages they're selling and making a profit off of. Don't you want a good customer service experience for people who have purchased cars from you so that they'll come back and purchase them again? The customer service shouldn't stop at the sale. It should continue throughout. And you see this in experiences at more luxurious car dealerships, but it shouldn't matter if you're buying a hoopty or a Cadillac. At the end of the day, people are people and we all deserve to be treated well. And if you want a repeat customer or a good review on Google or whatever the case is, be better. Be more proactive about your customer service. You already know this dude is a problem, and it's embarrassing for you to even be talking to me about this guy's cell phone bill. So the story continues where I left the car there. I basically asked the guy, if you were a betting man, what are the odds this guy's going to show up? And I thought, I'll take anything over 60%. So he said, I'm over 90% sure he'll show up because he usually is pretty consistent. I'm like, all right, well, I already got my ride. You got my car. Keep in touch. He told me he would call me when he verified that I had the cosmetic plan, because even that, they were like, I don't know if you have that. And everything just felt like a total shit show, which is really frustrating for me as the customer. So, do you think I got a call to confirm that I had the coverage? No. So at 1 o'clock, I called them to see what the hell is going on. And I end up getting told, oh, yeah, we'll call you back, because the guy I was working with couldn't talk. An hour and a half later, he calls me to tell me, oh, good news, you do have cosmetic coverage. Which I'm like, great, because that's what I was told on Monday by the receptionist, who apparently doesn't know anything and isn't supposed to tell me anything, but told me everything. And then the second thing was, the bad news is the guy hasn't showed up, and it's almost 2:30 in the afternoon. So here comes a little bit of good customer service now. So he already dropped the ball on not contacting me in the morning like he said he would to tell me if I had the coverage. But now I gave him a chance to redeem himself. And he said he would reach out to Zurich and he would figure out whether or not they could get somebody to come out to my house in case this dude no-showed. And he would also do his best, whatever he needed to do, to make sure that the claim stayed open so that I would still have the coverage, because obviously now this was going to need to be rescheduled. So, all right, awesome. He calls me back 15 minutes later. We're doing better now. And he says to me, guess what? They'll come to your house. And then as we're getting ready to work all of that out, he says, oh my gosh, the guy's walking in. I'm going to give him your keys. He's going to get to work. You can pick up the car at 4:30. So that's basically that story. And I can tell you many more, because I've always been such a fanatic for customer service. And I can tell you many times when, it's just not good. But that's one story and one example. And one of the ways that if I were coaching somebody on customer service, those are the scenarios and those are the things that I would tell them to do differently. So I hope you're with me. I know I'm not the only one who feels this. Send me an email, whatafusterclucklk@gmail.com, and tell me your customer service horror stories. And I'll read some of them out on my social media platforms, or I might even have you on to tell your story, especially if it's like a juicy or spicy one. But yeah, send those my way. Whatafusterclucklk@gmail.com. The other thing I want to talk about today, and I promise it's not politics, I'm taking a break from it because I'm just a little done after the last several weeks. I want to talk about, like I said at the top of the show, the fact that I see so many youngsters today, and I'm a middle-aged woman now, so I can say stuff like that. I'm not going to say, obviously, who, what, when, where, but I will tell you that I had the privilege of being on a call with someone in a senior position of an amazing company, and many, many folks were on that call. I want to say at least a couple hundred, and several people, when the opportunity for Q&A opened up, several people asked the question, how do I get into a leadership position? Insinuating that like they want it now. And I just got so discouraged, because you could look at that in one lens, which is, oh, they're just thinking about their future and they want to know what kind of path they should follow. But trust me, that wasn't the tone. And I hear about this often from my friends who work in HR, and from my friends who do different kinds of training, and from my friends who are teachers, and people who are working at companies now where they're seeing all these different types of, Gen X, Gen Z, millennials, boomers, all of these different folks kind of mixing together, Gen Y, in one working place, and just the massive difference in the collective understanding and personality, the different personality types. And it has never been this diverse of mentalities, the way people process information, the way people approach careers has never been as diverse as it is today. And people are working and living longer. So of course you can imagine, if you're working until you're in your 60s and sometimes 70s, trying to retire and you're working with somebody who's in their 20s, this is a totally different ball game nowadays. And I put myself in the position of the leader that was speaking. And of course, this person was wonderful about answering everyone's questions and answering them directly. And the one thing I thought of after the call was this is a good opportunity to remind people that there is no easy road to a leadership position. And that is one thing that the leader did point out, that it's not a straight path to the top. But what I would like to see us emphasize more for this younger crowd is grit and tenacity. This in this culture of mental health awareness and work-life balance and all the trendy cliche things to say, which I appreciate a lot of them, and I'm thankful to see some of these things going into place. One thing that I think we really need to be careful of is creating softies. And this goes to the parents out there too. We know the data suggests, helicopter parenting creates these bubble wrap children who just are not able to cope when they get into adulthood and need to get out into society. There's mental health issues abound. The numbers of people that are on medication we know has skyrocketed. And that's not to say that there's not a place for medication. I'm not that person who's like, you don't need medication for anything. Like you can handle anything life throws at you. I'm not one of those people. I know that some of us have it worse than others. I know that for some of us, it's not easy. Yes, we can all say, well, it's all about how you choose your attitude. And it is. But a lot of people who have gone through really tough times in life, sometimes they just need a little nudge, a little coaching, a positive role model to kind of help them get out of that victim mentality. However, these bubble wrapped kids, these softies, which I know is going to get me some slack, right? People thinking I'm saying something derogatory, but it's true. If we know it's true, if we just cut through the bullshit and our ideology and whatever we've been programmed to believe, we know that this is true. You have got to be able to experience some tough times. You know joy based on the more sadness you've encountered in your life. I really believe that. If you're someone who's living a life of pure joy, I don't know that you ever reach the euphoria, the euphoria of pure joy, if you haven't also experienced some hardship in your life. And that doesn't mean you have to go through something incredibly frightening or horrible or whatever, but you just appreciate the good times more when you've had some bad times. And when you're someone starting out in your career, I'm not saying that you have to be hazed to death and do ridiculous things or be like mentally abused by people who are in positions more senior to you. And I do think everybody needs to be looked at as a whole human. But what I am saying is, hey, man, you're younger, right? Like you've got the tenacity. Get it done. Be gritty. Put yourself out there. Be the first one to show up in the morning. Be the last one to leave at night. Don't be afraid to ask the questions. Don't be afraid to put in the extra work. It does go a long way. And I think that if we start to get away from this and we just make everything so easy for people, when shit hits the fan and when hard time comes that are out of our control, we will have no skills to be able to get through those hard times. And work is a great place for a lot of us to learn that lesson. So the next time maybe you encounter someone like this or a situation like this, try to emphasize the fact that, getting down and dirty, getting gritty, working your ass off, it comes with a level of adrenaline. Yes, it's exhausting. Yes, it's stressful, but damn, when you see the results of that, you just feel good. It's like working out or losing a bunch of weight and seeing your body transform. It's not going to happen overnight. And this is the message that I think we really need to start giving to young people, is to talk about the grind in a way that isn't going to make them feel like their hair is going to turn gray and they're going to have a heart attack at 28, but to frame it in a way as if you're playing for like the NBA playoffs or the Super Bowl trophy or the Stanley Cup, whatever it is, the World Cup, whatever it is. The win is so much sweeter when you've put in a shit ton of hard work. And sometimes it's not even holding that trophy. It's everything you did to get there. And I think we put so much value on the trophy or the title when the real value is in the work you did to get that trophy in your hand, to get that title in front of your name. And I also think even when you get to that point, it's important to then also remember to be humble and to coach other people on grit, tenacity, getting things done, putting yourself out there, taking a chance, taking a risk, especially when you're younger and you have less to lose, because that is what will serve you. My fear is that in the future, you're going to have all of these youngins that got put into these positions of authority simply because, some board somewhere said, oh, well, we have to put Johnny in this position because of his mental health or whatever. And get back to rewarding the people who have really put in the work, who have put in the extra TLC, and honoring that, honoring the hard work. This doesn't mean that you have to work yourself to death, although some people do. And I think this is where balance comes in. But like the way I see it, we have all of this technology at our fingertips, yet we're all still working our asses off, or at least most of us are. Where is this utopia that we were promised? And maybe I should be careful with that question because who knows? Utopia could be right around the corner. But I don't see how that's possible because, again, if people don't have something to work towards and to work for, you're just going to have a super lackluster society. And that's one of the things I love about America. That's one of the things that is just in our DNA. But I hate to see that as this nation evolves, and with each passing generation, you always say, I want my kids to have a better life than I had. I want my kids to have a better life than I had. But at what point can we say, my kids have a good life? They're doing really, really good. Everything is pretty damn great. And really start to talk to your kids, your coworkers, your teammates, people who report to you, whatever, about the value of the lessons learned from hard work and tough times. So I'm going to leave you with that. If you have some stories like that you want to share with me, maybe somebody that you've worked with that you went through this same thing with, and you kind of got them on the straight and narrow and taught them the value of hard work outside of a sports team, but actually at work. Talk to me about your tips and tricks. I'd love to hear them. whatafusterclucklk@gmail.com. And as always, please remember to like, follow, subscribe, and share. It really helps the show in the algorithm, and I can't thank you enough. So again, What a Fuster Cluck, available on Apple, Spotify, and YouTube. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, hit that share button. I am on social media. I do have a Facebook account. I do have an Instagram account. I do have an account on X. I'm kind of dabbling in Rumble, but honestly, it's all getting a little bit overwhelming considering, I don't have all the time in the world to work on this just yet. But those are my 3 platforms, and those are my 2 social media platforms. So I'm actually not getting my viewers from Facebook or Instagram. I don't have a lot of followers on those platforms. So please feel free, if you're not already following those pages, please feel free. I drop little reels from the show throughout the week. But luckily for me, the show's views are actually coming directly through people who are finding me on Apple, on Spotify, on YouTube. And maybe some of those are coming from views that I'm getting on my reels, which is awesome. Hopefully that's what's happening. And lo and behold, YouTube is like one of my most popular platforms, which I never saw that coming. So super thankful for that. And again, whatafusterclucklk@gmail.com. Email me with guest ideas, guest suggestions. Maybe you want to come on and talk about something. Talk to me about your customer service nightmare stories or the way that you improve them in the company that you work for. Talk to me about your thoughts on kids today wanting to go from college to the CIO of a company, or the CEO, I should say. Whatever it is, feel free to send me the email. If you disagree with something I say, you want to challenge a thought, anything it is, I read every email. And I get back to people at least within 72 hours. So really appreciate you reaching out. Follow me on social. Follow me on all of the podcasts that I just mentioned, the podcast platforms, YouTube, Spotify, and Apple. Thank you so much. I am your host, Lolita Keys. I appreciate you listening to me moan and groan and complain. Hopefully, you got a little nugget from this episode. So until next time, everybody, thank you so much.